I'm JP O'Reilly, and you're listening to the 3 Count Podcast.
Do you want to get live with me? Do you really want to ride with me? I'm in the club, baby, grind on me.
Welcome, everybody, to another great edition of the 3 Count Podcast presents Now Entering, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you out that mountain to call wrestling. And by now, with this being season 5 in our 390-something episode, I would just hope you say it with me. I am your Sherpa, because like your tribal chief, acknowledge me. But like every good Sherpa, you gotta have someone who's been there, done that, and can do it more efficiently than you can. So it's not about me, it's about who's entering the ring. So who's entering the ring? You can catch this person at Let's Wrestle, NAWA, CMW, and WWE, Limitless, MEW, and H2O. He is a wrestler. He is a deathmatch worker, and some would call him the Big Daddy Penguin. He is J.P. O'Reilly.
The Big Daddy Penguin. That's pretty much like the most notable thing, I guess, about my career.
I like it.
It's come and gone. It's had its moment. It's no longer the gimmick, but it was the prime feature of everything that I've ever done.
Well, it's like when I go through and do this research for wrestlers and stuff like that and try to learn more about them, like I find all sorts of like fun little things to talk about. And I'm like, yeah, let me get this. Let me put this in here too.
Bro, yeah, you'll find there's a lot of things that you can find.
No, so we met at NWWE. It's kind of funny because we weren't even like, you were kind of there, and then I had just showed up. Like
that show. So the way that day started was I was already working a 10-day fair show, so it was already like day 2, I think. And Larry Huntley came to me, or he messaged me before I got to the fair, and he said, "Hey, do you want to go down to Portland after the fair show and work another show?" I was like, "Sure, why not?" And he told me which promotion it was, and I've heard of the promotion, but I never had gone down to Rhode Island or anything or worked with them before in the past, but I know a lot of people that worked or do work for him now. So for Trooper, so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go down. And it said it was a guaranteed spot. Oh, that's why I asked him. I was like, is this like a guaranteed, like paid, like spot? And he's like, yeah, definitely. I'm like, cool. So we did the fair. We got in his truck. We drove down to Portland. And after seeing some guys that I hadn't seen in like 8 or 9 years, I was trying to figure out what I was doing. And I remember before I was getting there, I was originally going to wrestle Clipper Jones. And then when I got there, they changed the plans. And then all of a sudden it turned to a 3-way with the 2 other guys that I came with. And I was like, okay, this is all a jumbled mess a little bit, but we'll work with it. And then like 20 minutes before we actually went out and wrestled, that's when they came to me and said, yeah, you're going to wrestle Red Dog. And I was like, who's Red Dog? And all of a sudden the people just couldn't either find you or they just didn't know who you were. And I was like, they're like, yeah, look for Clifford. And I was like, and they mentioned like you had a dog. And I was like, I was so confused. I was like, is somebody ribbing me? Because I was like, I've seen no wrestler here with a dog. And it's like, yeah, look for the dude with the big red dog, Clifford. I'm like, I don't know who that is.
Well, it's funny because like in my point, right, I was in the front row just getting ready to watch the show. And I had heard someone say Red Dog. I was like, they just talk about me. That's cool. And I just sat there. And then just somebody randomly came up to me and was like, are you Red Dog? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, you're needed in the back.
It was like GK that came to me and he was just like, oh, yeah, you're going to wrestle Red Dog. And I was like, cool, where's Red Dog? And he's like, I don't know. All of a sudden, Brick Baker comes out back. He's like, yeah, he's this guy. And I was like, who? I was like, nobody's telling me this guy is. And you walk through the curtain and they all turned and looked at you, were like, him. And I looked at my watch and they said that they wanted that to be a pre-show. And it was like 6:55 at that point.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So, and I was like half dressed. I was like, I don't know what we're doing, what they want. And then they're like, yeah, go 6 minutes curtain to curtain. And I was like, the fuck? Like, we go 6 minutes curtain to curtain. That it's gonna take me 2 minutes just to get out there. Like, come on now. But then you and I wrestled, and everyone loved it, which was funny. Like, all these people that I had never met before came up to me, and they were like, "Yo, that was really good." And I was just like, "Yeah, because I don't half-ass my shit."
I think what made it even better though is I was telling the story to Big Cat, and I was telling it to on their podcast. I was like, literally, we were like, I get called, I hop to the back, I grab Brian Bayside because that's who I rode up with.
Yeah.
I went to his car, grabbed my stuff, and I'm putting on my stuff as we're calling the match, and then the promoter comes over and was like, "Hey, what's the story for you guys to show? Like, what are you guys gonna do?" So we repeated it to him. He's like, "Great, you send your music to me? Cool." Boom, hit the play button, and I walked through the curtain, and we had just finished calling the match.
Oh yeah, we literally had just finished calling it, and then we did it, and I think we added a little extra to it too. It was just half of it was on the fly. And the funny part about all of it is when it was all said and done, and I went out back and I felt good about it. I got changed. I put my gear bag away. I went and got myself a drink. I went to go sit down. As I'm about to sit down and relax, I see GK sprinting across the venue to me and telling me that they need someone to do a hardcore match. Literally the match after what was already on, which I think was Stevie and I don't know, some other dude. And I was like, what? My gear bag's already locked in the car. I only have a pair of knee pads on me, which we're just sitting on the back of the truck. And he was just like, yeah, just go in your normal clothes. It'll make it look more authentic, more real. Okay, and I'm like, who am I wrestling? And then they tell me who I'm wrestling, and we didn't even put anything together. All we put together was he had a bag of tacks and he had this door or table. It looked like a door, and I was just like, okay, I'll take the tack bump and take the table bump. It's for a title, so I was like, you can just fuck me up. And that's essentially what happened. But my dumbass decided to go face first in those tacks and take an RKO. And I rolled over and the ref leans over. He's like, are you okay? And I was like, no. I was like, I don't know why I decided to do that.
My hands.
My hands were all covered. I was just like, great. So I rolled over. I was bleeding. I just took it. I'm just rubbing it here because I didn't get any on my head or anything. And I was like, yeah, cool, whatever. All the drunk dudes in the front row loved it. But it was so just unplanned, and I was already ready to relax and everything, and no, I just had to go balls to the wall there at the end, and it was not too impressed. I mean, it is what it is. But the funny thing was Trooper wasn't even watching. Trooper got in his truck and left around the front side of the building, and then he comes back after I'd walked back through the curtain, and he was like, "Hey, thank you for filling in that spot." And I was like, "Yeah. Was it good?" And he goes, "Oh, I didn't watch it." I was like, "Aw." I was like, "Well, I guess that's probably a good thing, I guess."
I was gonna say, just knowing the story and everything behind it, yeah, it was good because it was perfectly planned. Because I think the other worker was supposed to show up and they just didn't.
It was supposed to be Lucas Chase, who was about 45 minutes in the other direction, and he I think he purposely double booked himself, and from what I was being told and gathered, but he went on late for his match, so he was never able to get out of the venue and be able to drive to that venue where we were at. But there was another show happening 45 minutes away. So, and it was in Larry Huntley's hometown where he lives 2 minutes from too. So, I had a feeling that something weird about all that was going on. So, but it worked out.
Well, and that's the thing that a lot of workers have to understand too, is that when it comes to pro wrestling, you have to be adaptable. You have got to mold and bend, because the promoter may want one thing out of you, and then the next thing you know, they're going to want another thing out of you, or this thing out of you, or something to that effect. So you have to be able to kind of
I've had so many just on the spot fly moments where things just went AWOL. I think the craziest thing that I've ever been a part of that was just it was disaster, but like everything changed all on the fly because of what it was. There was this deathmatch show that happened here in Maine, which deathmatch wrestling shows don't ever happen in Maine. It's very uncommon, but like you'll see shows that'll have hardcore death matches on it, but this was solely supposed to be a deathmatch show entirely, a tournament and all. And basically half the talent that were coming from out of state got the location wrong and thought that the town was Waterville, Maine. They thought it was Waterville, Connecticut.
Oh no.
So 7 o'clock rolls around and they're in Connecticut. They still drove up, but it was like 10:30 by the time they showed up, and they had stalled the show for like an hour. And the show that was supposed to be a deathmatch tournament turned just into a regular show with hardcore matches. There was no tournament involved because half the talent didn't show up. And Nick Gage was supposed to be on the show, and Nick Gage turned into a meet and greet is what happened because he didn't have time to wrestle because they only had the venue for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Then that whole show is on YouTube somewhere. It's under Rated R Wrestling. It was a train wreck for sure. But like so many things changed on the fly, and then like we're out there like trying to help with the show to make sure like it just still looks like a show, because at that point they were like, we don't know what to do. We don't even know what to do for matches. I don't even know if we should even do this. And they already had fans in the room. Granted, there was maybe about 12 people in attendance. So that didn't really help either. I could have been like, you could just tell all 12 people to go home. Just like, I don't think you're going to hurt anyone's feelings if you tell 12 people to go home.
There was a small error, and yeah, this is what's going on.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, the whole, like, just so many situations changing on the fly. It gets crazy. Oh, and there's my cat.
Well, hi.
Right.
Welcome to the scene.
Welcome to the podcast. This is Nemo.
Nice.
He's only like a few months old, and he is the fattest kitten I've ever had.
I love the fact that like Nemo was like petting your beard just there.
Oh yeah, he was laying here on the table for the last 5 minutes while I was just like petting his head, and his purring was probably just going right into the phone, into the mic. Yeah, I have this one. I have a disabled cat, and then I have 2 dogs, which at some point my other half will come home and they will start barking madly. So that'll be very out of nowhere.
I have a dog myself, and
is it a big red dog? And if it's not, I'm very disappointed.
Like that one right there.
See, yes. Okay.
No, actually, so my actual dog is actually I think she's a mix and she's a rescue, so I'm not quite sure exactly what she is, but she's definitely chocolate lab. I know that for sure, but it's like a chocolate lab, like I always say beagle mix, because she's, just think about like a chocolate lab and then just like shrink it down to like 55 pounds, and that's
right. No, I totally get it. I have 2 beagles, like pure beagles, so they are they search for everything. They could find a lost child in a well 3 miles down the road if they wanted to.
I think it's so that's the craziest thing too about like dogs too. It's just like, so she likes to search for everything, and anything that's like a rodent or a bird, if it's on the ground, she tries to like sniff it out and hunt it. And like I'm like, you are ridiculous. But she's so super high energy too, just like a regular hound dog is. And I'm like, yo, or like a little beagle, just super high energy, loves to jump around, and then she'll work hard, then she crashes so hard.
Oh yeah. These 2, because of how big my yard is, if they sprint up and down the whole yard itself, not even like once or twice, they're done for the whole rest of the day.
Well, I took mine out to the lake because, like I said, she's lab, so she loves the water, and she was in the water for like 40 minutes, just swimming around. I had her on a giant leash, and she's just swimming, having fun.
I've never taken these dogs out on the water, and I can't imagine either of them being able to swim.
So the first time I took her out to this pond over in Rhode Island, and I really wasn't paying too much attention to her. I was just like letting her go play with a stick. I didn't pay attention to the time. It must have been an hour and 15 minutes. She was dog tired, right? No pun intended, but she was just tired. So we took her home and we let her like just lay down, but she kept like doing like the restless thing. So I was like, "Yo, what's up with her?" And the next day, her tail had just like sunk, and it was just laying over. And she had what do you call it? Water tails. Essentially, her tail just like, because she had used it so much swimming because she was so excited
Oh my
that
god.
it just limped over. And so it took a couple days for it to like come back, so it would be like pointing again. But
Oh well, at least
it's
it
a normal
came
thing.
back. But oh my
Yeah.
god, that's terrifying.
But it was like, yo, what's wrong with her tail? Like, what's up with her? I've never seen it before, so seeing
Right.
it the first time, I was like, oh snap. But yeah, she ended up being all right. So I was like, all right, well, good that you're having fun with your tail dropping.
Right. I have no feeling in it whatsoever.
Right? So, hey, listen, like I'm gonna ask this question, and I like asking this question to everybody, but who is JP O'Reilly?
JP O'Reilly. Well, he is 100% bona fide maniac. That's for sure. And funny enough, because I'm a dad, I like dad jokes and I like puns. So the reference to JP O'Reilly being a hardcore maniac is the name Maniac is actually spelled with the state of Maine embedded into it. So I implement pretty much a very dad joke esque type of feel to my gimmick. But JP O'Reilly, once turned no name to being a lover of penguins to completely losing his entire mind due to so many poor choices that have been made, while also being a goofy, loving, fun person that just loves to bleed. That's probably the best way that I can describe who JP O'Reilly is.
No, I like that. I like that a lot. Give me 1 second. We'll be right back.
Yeah, you're good. Don't put me.
All right. No. We gotta go now. All right. So we'll go 3, 2, 1. No, so I like that a lot because the thing is that especially with characters, right? As you're like building every character and you're trying to find new things to add to it or take away from it, like there's a constant evolution that goes on with it. So I know, like for me, like when I first got into it, like I thought your trainer was the one that gave you your gimmick. Like I didn't know that you how much control you had over it.
Yep.
So when I started, he was like, "Well, you're in the military. You got to be like a military guy. Be like stoic and like show no emotion, just like one place." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "But that's not who I am, though." I was like, I like to think I'm funny sometimes, and then I write jokes all the time. I like a lot of dark humor. Like these are things I like. And he was like, yeah. We'll figure that out. And so for like 6 months, 6 to 8 months, like that's all I did was try to work on like being serious and like having these conversations. And all my friends knew it was forced. Like they just knew.
They're
So
like, you're not
finally,
that guy.
yeah. So then finally, like, I told my trainer, I was like, listen, bro, like I'm trying my best, but I just can't get this across. I was like, I need to kind of like ease up and relax and do the things that I need to do. And he's like, okay, well, you cut a promo the way you want to. And I was just like, okay. And the first time I shot a promo, not only did I like one shot it, he was just like, all right, that's what we're gonna do. And so like Deadpool right there, he became very much the base of my my character. And I was like, well, he's also a mercenary. He likes to talk a lot of shit, talks to the cameras all the time. Like I can do that. And so and I started building up like him, and it became important to me like to add things and take things out. Like, still love the fact that he's very much like the family man, This was one of my favorite things to do. And I always tell people, I was like, something new I added in recently was that pliés and Crayolas don't pay for themselves.
That's very fitting.
But I do like the fact that you said that you like good dad jokes, because I do too.
Oh yeah, I mean, like as I got older and I started to realize the cliche things of life, you know, when in fatherhood, I kind of appreciate them more, and kind of like to implement those. My whole character, from the get go, like I've been in this for 10 years. And like you were referring to, you know, you thought, you know, your trainer is the one that picks your gimmick, stuff like that. Mine was like not the case. It was more of a round table discussion. So my first ever match that I ever had, I was actually a replacement, but we hadn't established. I was the only one in my class of people that had not like established a gimmick or character yet. So basically the entire locker room, staff, all of us, all literally sat down in the ring and came up with my name and just simple things that I could do. Because again, I was very limited in what I could do. I had not had a match yet. So they all like looked around. They're just like, okay, what's your like descent? You know, and I was like, well, I'm like 75% Irish. So, and 25% French. So like, okay, so let's come up with something that's, you know, Irish based. So somebody asked me, what's your middle name? And I said, my middle name is a hyphenated name. It's two names, which are my grandfather's first names. So it's John hyphen Paul. So everyone like looking at each other was just like, okay, so what would be a very stereotypical last name that's Irish? And so people just start going like O'Malley or O'Shea or O'Neill, and then somebody out of the blue just goes O'Reilly. Everyone stops and just turns, and they like look at the person that's our ring announcer, and he's just like, "What I do?" Like he was like scared that he just said the wrong thing, and then the promoter just goes, "You're John Paul O'Reilly." That's exactly how he said it, and I was like, "Okay." So the promoter for the who's also my original trainer, he had a suitcase. This was like a luxury liner, like a first class suitcase, a huge suitcase, and it was called the gimmick tote, or like the death tote, but it was just full of singlets, pants, random wrestling merch attire, boots, tights, you name it. And it was full. This thing was so full, it was so hard to open and close. So he opens it up, he starts pulling stuff out, and he's like, what size singlet are you? And I was like, at the time, because when I first started wrestling, I was only like 210, 220 pounds. I'm 340 now, but that's a whole other story. So like, I'm just like, oh, like a 2X singlet, pulls out a singlet. It's a Grimace purple colored singlet. I was like, oh boy. Pulls it out, and then he finds these, nothing matched. This was straight out of like closing your eyes and clicking random on the creation engine, like just of creating a character on any WWE 2K game, and that's what spawned out was what I was. It was a purple singlet, and it was these blue and black tribal pants, and then there was these boots were called moon boots. They were red and black. I don't know what brand, like where they came from, but they were the only thing that fit, because I was like a size 13 foot. So I put it all on, and that's all I had. I had nothing. I had no plans on wrestling. And then, so they're all like, okay, you need some theme music. So the ring announcer and the music guy, all of a sudden, just their heads clicked together, and they were both like audio recording artists. Like they just did like audio stuff. So they, for the next hour, had been sitting next to each other, putting something together. But the whole time they're doing it, they're giggling and laughing the whole time, and I was like, "Oh, this is not good. This is not good." And funny enough, is at the time the ring announcer is now who runs Limitless Wrestling. So him being the big major like intro to my character is a great feeling at this point in time with how successful Limitless is. But they put together this god awful Irish Gaelic dubstep that this is 2015, so like this was like peak Excision and like it was so terrible and really really bad, and I hadn't heard it. They didn't let me listen to it. They just said there's a drop, wait for the drop, because I'm all about my whole the recurring theme you will always hear from any music I've ever used is some sort of drop. And so they knew that about me, and they're like, just wait for the drop. And when I heard that drop, I came out, I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. I was like, what is this? And from then on, I just, I developed, I slowly like started trying to put more things that match together with my gear and stuff like that. Eventually, like I started wearing, my favorite bands, like band t-shirts or tank tops as part of my gear, to try and get more of a presence of who I was out there. But it still felt kind of weird. I had kept the tribal pants. Out of everything that I wore in my first wrestling match, there was one pair of gear that I always kept, and it happened to be these like blue and black tribal. They were shorts. They were tribal shorts, and those like what you get from Lucha. Like that, those ones, and I just kept them for the longest time, and I wore them. And then 6 months into me wrestling on a regular basis, the promoter of my home promotion, he turned me heel, and I turned on my at the time tag partner who I'd started training with, and we both started wrestling at the same time. So at that point, I had ended up teaming up with a guy that was specifically doing a Canadian gimmick. So everything was red and white. So he actually had gear that I fit in that we could match and be a legit looking tag team. We'd go on and win tag team titles, and the gear would develop from there. But we ended up calling ourselves the Canadian Irish Alliance. So it was the CIA. So eventually somebody found me a pair of tights. It was the first tights I ever had. They were green, and they had these like Irish crosses on them, and it was perfect. I was like, that's the gear. I got myself a black singlet, and all of a sudden I actually, for a moment in time, looked like an actual pro wrestler for a very brief stint of time. And I did that. And I loved doing the heel work at the time. But granted, I had only been a year and a half in. So like I was still learning so much stuff when it come to being a heel. That if I have not been a heel wrestler since the end of, or since, about 2019. Like if I was a heel now, I feel like it would be so much better than what it was. But yeah, the gear thing and just like the start of it all was a very, very unknown character that slowly developed into its own based on who I was with and how I was affiliated with other people. And then eventually I would turn on my heel partner. And that was when, for the first time in my career, I was completely on my own, and I had to establish myself with some sort of gimmick. And that ended up being a gimmick that still was confusing to a lot of people, but it was more concentrated on the presence that I gave more than what the actual label of what the gimmick was. I started doing promos on my own where they were dark. I always had a very dark aura growing up, or I would say like when I started 19, 20, 21, 22, I had a very, very dark aura when it came to my promo. So everything was very like evilish, very menacing looking, very death metal type of aura. And I eventually used this slogan, which it's kind of a cliche thing. It was called "Break the Cycle." And my earlier promos, I would end my promo lines with something with those words kind of tied into it. So eventually I took just that 3-word saying and I put it on a t-shirt and it stuck. It stuck. It stuck. It stuck. And oddly enough, I found a song that fit my whole gimmick so well that the song actually ended up being called Break the Cycle, which was the funniest thing. And it's by For Today. Great band. And I used that song, and the song had a drop. It was a very hard, heavy metal song. And my aura matched. So it all came together. I was like, this is it. This is the gimmick. This is the character. This is what I'm going to do. And I took that and I floored with it.
No, I like that because again, like you just paint a picture of like how, again, back to what we said originally when we started this podcast, that you got to be adaptable and malleable and kind of mold and understand like you're always adding pieces and taking pieces out of like your character, just like how you say, like even from the start where your name was like, with John Paul, like now it's JP, and then we've taken that out. And then
that's the other thing. The first when I had my first match and they announced me as John Paul O'Reilly, as soon as the match was over, the first thing that I said to the ring announcer was, I don't want you to ever call me John Paul O'Reilly ever again, because it sounded so terrible. It just sounded so pathetic. I was like, how about we just shorten it? And they're like, what about JP? And I was like, that sounds way better. Like just doing it as JP, and that stuck, because there are times now, just because it's an easy name to say. It's such an abbreviated lettered names is so easy to say, but like I introduce myself always as Nick, but no matter who the person is, whether it's in wrestling, in real life, whatever, if it's in wrestling, it's always Nick first. But once they figure out what my gimmick name is, it always adapts to that. And then there's times that I just don't remember ever meeting someone and calling myself JP, and I'm like, why do you call me that? Like, why do you call? And then it's fit, but then like fans, it's a common one too. Like I'll run into a fan at the store and they'll just be like JP, and I'm like, that's fine.
It's funny though, because like for me, like when I got in, everybody was like, well, what's your name going to be? And I was like, yo, it's going to be Red Dog. It's the same name I've had since I was in high school or in elementary school. And they're like, well, why Red Dog? I was like, well, my first name's Clifford. It's kind of obvious. Clifford the Big Red Dog.
If you say it too fast, it sounds like it's saying Raw Dog.
You know what's so funny? Like I've never shared this, so you guys get to be the first.
Oh boy. Exclusive.
My friends on when we play Xbox, that's all I'm known as.
It's Raw Dog.
Yeah, it's my friend. He'll always drop. He'll be like, "Yo, it's the rawest one, Raw Dog."
That's great.
It's hilarious. And I'm just like, "What's up, y'all?" They're like, "No, man."
It's like I'm used to it at this point. Like,
it's this point. Like, I'm not even gonna fight this, bro. Like, it is what it is.
I would have people as baby faces use my name against me, and they would. I had somebody, I don't remember where it started, but then other wrestlers found out about it, and they would start calling me GP O'Reilly. And so in promos, live in front of a crowd, they'd be like, "Oh, look, it's GP O'Reilly." Like it was so bad. And then when I did the Break the Cycle gimmick, my best friend in wrestling, he somehow managed to, in the midst of a promo, look at me in the eyes and be like, listen, I don't know what this Break the Cycle thing is. I don't know whose menstrual cycle you're breaking. And I was just like, oh no, we've started something that we should not have started. And then that's all it was for the whole story. It was like menstrual breaking and just promos and graphics of horrible scenes of things that you never wanted to imagine in a promo, and I go, I gotta get rid of this. I was like, I gotta figure out a way out of this real quick.
One of my friends down in Maryland, his name's Andino, and we always refer to him as Andino Heat, and like he just does not. So as a heel, like I'll always be like, I'll say I'll be up in the crowd because I'll just probably be watching all his matches. I'll be in the crowd and like Andino Heat, Andino Heat, and he just looks and he knows it's me, but he's always like, stop it, and then the crowd catches on. And he's like, "Oh my god, I hate this."
Oh my god, that's great.
No, yo, so it's funny because I love hearing like the story that you have, but I want to know one thing: what's the worst bump you've taken?
Oh god, I got to think about this for a second. Dear God, it's weird to say, but I've never taken a bad bump. I have taken just very dangerous looking bumps. Oh my god. I had a bump that actually broke my tailbone, but it didn't look bad. It looked like a regular thing, and it somehow it fucked up my spine. I was picking up a dude for a power bomb, and as he went up, he jumped, landed on his feet behind me. I turned around, went to go throw a line, and there's a chair on the other side of him in a sitting position. He ducks the line, and as I turn around, he comes off the ropes and he drop kicks me. And as he drop kicks me, I go to sit in the chair, hoping that like I'll sit in the chair and I'll like tip back or whatever, and then he can hit me again. I somehow missed the trajectory of the chair, and I somehow like hit my spine on the brim of the seat, and then I rode the brim of the seat all the way up my spine, and I shattered my tailbone. And I didn't know I shattered my tailbone until later. And so when you watch it on it's on YouTube too, and you see the chair, the seat bend, and then I just fall out of the chair and I roll out of the ring, and you hear me hit the floor hard. And I didn't find out until like 2 hours later 2 hours, at least 2 hours, because I remember leaving the venue, going home, and I went to bed. And when I woke up, I could not sit up. And I was like, that's not good. I get up, I could walk just fine. Didn't feel any pain while walking. I could not bend or sit down. That's how bad it was. Damn. But like that didn't look like a devastating bump. I'd have to say the most craziest bump that I've ever taken that looked really bad would have to be something just break. I think the biggest worst bump that I've ever taken. I was giving someone a Death Valley driver off the second rope to the floor through a bundle of light tubes on a door. Onto concrete. Yeah. No, so we took the bump. I was this close to racking my head off of the head of the chair, like the brim of the chair. I have like 5 angles of it online I have my mom's POV of it. I have ringside cam of it. And then I have like people in the front row that are parallel to the table. And I'm watching every shot, and every single shot it looks like I almost died. It was pretty rough. It was great, but like it was scary. I probably would say one other honorable mention was taking a 12-foot bump off of scaffolding through a bundle of tubes on a door. The guy that I was doing that with was supposed to come with me off the bump, and we get up there and he looks at me and he goes, I can't do it. And I was like, well, that sucks. Guess I'm just going to jump, hoping that he'll get down quickly so that I could take the pin. No, he just takes his time, getting down for the pin, and my manager who's with me thought that I was going to kick out, and he looks at me and goes, "You're going to kick out, right?" Oh, there go the dogs. Hey! Stop. And yeah, so I take this bump, and my manager, who's right next to me after going through the tubes, he looks at me thinking I'm going to kick out, and he goes, "You're going to kick out, right?" And all of a sudden, here comes my opponent, 5 minutes later after getting off the scaffold, crawling back into a barbed wired ring, by the way, goes for the pin. And my manager, as the count's going, he's like, "You're going to kick out, right? You're going to kick out, right?" He didn't kick out. And I was like, "No, I'm done." I'm like, "I'm over this." I'm like, "This was not the finish." And then I just dead sold until like everyone left. I didn't leave the ring or anything. And everyone just like, because I was the main event, they left the show, everything, and they're just like, I just laid there, and they all come to me and they're like, "You good?" I'm like, "No." I was like, I didn't want to do that.
No,
but I had to. Yeah. It was supposed to be us just like Russian leg sweeping off the scaffold through the door. No, I just jettisoned myself off of it into a flip.
That sucks.
Yeah, it was not a good time. But yeah, no, I can't think of any like bad bumps where I was like questionable. I almost ruined someone's face with a bump. With lighter people, or in this case, my best friend, I would do a second rope pile driver. So I would hook them, and I would go, and it would be with I'd have a door for the spot. So like it'd be a door just full of gimmicks or whatever on it. So I had a door. I think it had soda cans on it, half-cut soda cans, and I went to go. No, actually, correction. We didn't have a table. We had 6 chairs lined up perfectly like a table, and I was like, "Cool, we're gonna go up and we're gonna jump. We're just gonna eat these." And this was Philly Mike Swanson. So Philly Mike, of course, he's gonna do that. So we go to do it, and you can find it on YouTube. I go to hook him for it, and as I go to lift up the bottom half of his body, my entire top half just immediately starts going forward, and I have nowhere to grab because I have both of my arms around him, and I'm trying to lean back as far as I can. No, all of the weight and everything, I lost him. I ended up turning it into a second rope styles clash, and he went face first through all 6 chairs. I thought I broke his face, broke his nose, everything, rolled him over, and as I'm pinning him, I kept saying, "Sorry, sorry, sorry." And we went out back, and I thought he was going to punch me in the face, and I was like, "This dude's going to murder me." And I come up back, and I'm like, "Bro, I'm so sorry." He looks at me and goes, "That was the greatest bump I ever took in a long time." Like, it was like all happy about it. And I was just like, "Are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah, no, I would do that all over again." So we ended up taking the video, posting on TikTok, and then I ended up, that dumb ways to die meme. And so like I did it like that, and it's literally the fall. It's the descent because it's a really slow descent fall, and then it pauses. Perfect timing with that meme. So I did that, and it got some good views. And I was like, "Yeah, this is one of those we fucked up moments." Like nobody in the show could tell. People thought that was the finish, and I go, "No, it was supposed to be a second rope pile driver," and they're like, "Oh." Like, no, he messed up. So yeah, I think I've given people more bad looking bumps than I've taken of my own.
I remember that video because I'm friends with Philly Mike as well, and I remember that video.
You saw it?
This is full circle. Come back around. I was like,
"Oh,
Jesus
man.
Christ!"
If I ever wrestled him again, if you watch the whole rest of the match, it's all like, it was great. It was really good. There was a summer that I just the summer of punk. Well, in this case, it was JP's summer. What did I call it? It was I'd have to look back at my post that I made on social media. I made this whole thing that was specifically around the summer. It was like summer season of Havoc or hardcore summer fun fest. It was this whole thing where at this promotion I would call out random people or open chat. It would be an open challenge or something depending on the circumstance. And So when I started it, it was in May, and the first person that I ended up having accept it was Slade.
Mm.
So I had Slade accept it, and this was a week's notice. And I thought I was going to die. He shows up. He has just his boots in his hand. He's wearing jeans and a wife beater. He walks in, sits down, puts his boots on, and then for 3 hours, he proceeds to just pace in one direction, back and forth, back and forth. And then he looks at me and goes, or I looked at him and I was like, so what do you want to do? And he's just like, whatever. Like, great, cool, that's awesome. I was like, okay, well, I was thinking we could do this and do this and do this. And the only words that I got out of him was, yeah, man, that's fine. I'm like, this man's going to murder me. I go out there. He comes out. The fans are terrified of this dude. And we put on what I think was a pretty subpar hardcore match. We were supposed to do a spot where I do a cheese grater thing, which is what I'm basically known for. Everyone that I've done the cheese grater gimmick with, usually they'll pull the curtain back a little bit. Usually they'll put it to my forehead and they'll tap it, and that'll just get me bleeding. And I tell them, like, yeah, just put it to my forehead and just, like hit it really hard like that. Yeah, man. Okay. We go out there. He grabs it and like, all right, he's going to place it, and he just takes it and he just hammer fists it. Not even putting it to my head, just right over the second rope, just hammer fisting it, and just instant, like busted. I was like, great, cool, this sucks. And we went on, we just did the whole rest of the match, and it was great. I think I sandbagged him on one spot. It was a body slam into a spool of wire, and he like picked me up, but he picked me up so fast that, and again, I'm 340 pounds. The dude's like $180. And he hoisted me up so fast I had no time to post. And all of a sudden I come up, and because I had no post, it was the momentum stalled here. And then you just watch him just drive me like power slam style into the spool of wire. I was like, okay, yep, I fucked up. And then and then the show's over. I cut a nice promo and like put him over. And then he comes out back. He takes his boots off, puts his shoes on, shakes my hand, shakes the promoter's hand, and then walks up to 3 other boys from the Creative Pro Academy, says something to them, and then gets in his car and leaves. I was like, that's it. I was like, that was Slade. That was the whole Slade experience. And then the month after, me and Philly Mike did that match. And then the month after, I had Bam Sullivan come up. And we did stuff with H2O, which we also did a story with, I don't know if you know Scotty Ceriti.
Sounds vaguely familiar.
He was a commentator. He does commentating and ring announcing for H2O. He was a commentator for Underground Pro, I think it's called. He's been around quite a bit. He's New Jersey based now. And he never really came up to like the deeper Northeast until I started like having him come up with these dudes. So he came up with Bam, and he interjected himself into the match and cost me the match with Bam. Then I kind of call him out, and I was like, go ahead and bring anyone you want. And I somehow managed to get Akira. He brought Akira down. That was terrifying. I thought Slade was bad. I pulled into the parking lot. I pulled up right next to Akira, who was in the driver's seat of the car next to him, and we had not really talked at all prior to seeing each other in person. And I pull up next to Akira, and I just look at him, and I just give him this like shitty green. And this is me. I've been watching the dude for years, like do all the crazy deathmatch shit that he does. You know, he's in MLW and Japan and all this shit. And I just look at him with this shit-eating grin. And I'm just like, hi. And he just looks at me and he just goes, all right, we'll make this work. I was like, oh, fuck. Like, okay. And so, like, I had put this whole process together of this match, and he was just like, yeah, no, we're not going to do any of that. I was like, okay, what do you want to do? And then we put this match together, and the whole match, 90% of the match consisted of just me getting my ass whooped entirely. For half the match, he had some sort of submission hold on me to a point that once he got like around my neck, I was just so physically exhausted. I was like, this man is wearing me out. This needs to like stop. I was so exhausted. And then I decided we're going to integrate gusset plates for the first time. So I was like, yeah, the finish can be with gusset plates. So he takes one of the gusset plates, he puts it on my arm and like bashes it in my arm. That's the first time taking it. I go, oh, that's not bad. That's really not that bad. He then proceeds to take one and put it on my chest while putting me in a like Kujita clutch or whatever the fuck he does. He puts me in the clutch and then he takes his other hand and just hammer fists the fucking gusset into my chest on my heart side. And I'm like, and as soon as he did it once, I just immediately started tapping and he just kept going. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? He just kept going, would not let go. I rolled over and I just laid there and I was like, yeah, no, this was probably the worst of this series of matches. And he ended up grabbing the microphone and like cutting a good 3-minute promo, putting me over. I was very surprised. Blew my mind away that he even did it. I also didn't realize that it was Marcus Crane's birthday that day too, who's a very close friend of his, who was a very good deathmatch wrestler. And I was like, oh, well, I guess this, I'm very surprised that he did all this. So that eventually led to what was supposed to be me and Tremont. And that didn't happen because Danny DeMonto fucked me over. But I love Danny to death, but Danny fucked me over getting my first chance of ever wrestling Tremont. Every time I see Danny, any ICW show that happens in Boston, I go right up to him and I'm like, "You fucked on me!" Like, and as a joke, he's just like, "Yeah, I'm sorry." It's like, "You gotta make it up to me now. You gotta let me on the ICW show." And not even a chance in hell. Not even happening. So I'm just like, it is what it is.
I got you. No, I like that. That's actually a wild ass story and wild ass trip.
Yeah.
But it goes back to like me talking about with wrestling, and we're going to talk about this before we jump into my favorite part of this. But one of my favorite part about wrestling is that you're always one step away from one person that you might know. You know, it's like one person who knows somebody who knows like somebody from like a bigger area, and you just didn't know that.
That's literally us. That's literally you and me.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like the moment you showed me how many people you've interviewed, I was like, wait a minute, I work with these people. I know these people. I was like, I've known these people in my career. And like I saw that you did the podcast with Big Cat, and I was like, I've known Big Cat before Big Cat was even Big Cat. I was like, this is the wild, weird circle going on here. That's what I love about wrestling is you meet someone that knows everyone that you know, and it's just like all of a sudden they're your best friend.
Well, like I'll give you a perfect example of like some people that I've interviewed. Right? So, you know, Philly Mike, obviously, we just talked about that, right? And Big Cat, but then also Cade Lothbrock was on the show, and I worked at one of his first matches being Cade from moving on from being Stockade.
Right, yep.
And Mason Martin, who is a friend of mine, who trained with our trainer Sticken. He knew Cade, so you know he was telling me some things like "Hey yo," and I didn't know what to expect. I was like, "Bro, I'm gonna walk in this area. This dude's a deathmatch wrestler who's gonna try to murder me." And come to find out, like I sat there, I was just very quiet, just waiting for him. Right? He came to me. He's like, "Yo, what do you want to do?" And I was like, "I don't know. Let's talk." And then he's like, "Okay." And then from there, like we had a conversation. And now every time I see Cade, I'm like, "Yo, what's up, Cade?" And everybody else is like, "Yo, do you know who?" I was like, "I know who this is, bro." Like, it's
yeah, it only takes one match, and that's just or working for one person. That's just kind of like how it is. That's how I am with a lot of people. Like some dudes, like I wrestle them once, and then we don't really ever talk again, or it's years. Like I saw Brick Baker at that show, who helps Trooper run that show, and the last time I saw him was when I was still discovering my character, but I was working my first out-of-state wrestling show. Like I had actually branched off, and he was just at a show as NCW, which was in like Massachusetts, and he was just there, and like me and him had a long talk, and that was like 8 years ago. First time I see him in 8 years, just at a brewery distillery in Portland, Maine, at a parking lot, and I'm like, what the hell? I was like, and I hugged him, and like a few people looked at me, and they're just like, "Who the fuck is this kid?" And it was just like, "No, I've known Brick. I've known him for years."
I think there's something into that too, right? So how you just said that, like I saw Brick and I was like, I'll be real, like I didn't know who Brick was, but I saw everybody was kind of floated around him, but then everybody like left him alone like during the show. And after our match, the first thing I did is walk right over to Brick and I was like, "Hey," it's like, "if you don't mind me asking, sir, like, how was my match and what could I have done to get better?" And man,
that's the best person that you could have gone to first. Absolutely. He has such a long knowledge of wrestling in specifically like the Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut area. Like he knows his stuff. Like yeah, that, and I totally get that. I've had so much knowledge of trainers, I guess I would say. Like I started training up here in area called Brewer, Maine, with a guy. His name is Eric Johnson. He has been wrestling for almost 20 years. He was trained by, I don't even remember who he was trained by, but like it was also mixed with like Tony Atlas and like stuff like that. Like Tony Atlas was like one of his trainers. And then eventually, after about like 6 months of training with him, I ended up moving to New Hampshire. So I was like, all right, where's the closest place that I can go to for wrestling school? This is like 2015. There are no wrestling schools in New Hampshire at that time. And I found out that New England Pro Wrestling Academy was 45 minutes away from my house. So I was like, I'm going to go to New England Pro Wrestling Academy. You know, look at all the people that came out of New England Pro Wrestling Academy. So the Triple H, China, you know, all those people, like, you know, Killer Kowalski School. So I went there and I trained with 3 people that were there. 2 of them are redacted names now. They are now part of the Me Too movement. So there's only one that I can ever have an honorable mention of. His name was Amato Figueroa, is also known as Seth Ron. He does a lot of Massachusetts-based promotions. He worked for APW. It's like his home promotion. He was one of the guys that like helped me basically put all the stuff together. Like you learn this move, you learn this move, you learn this move. Now create a story. Like he was the one that put the developmental part together for me. But the problem is with all of these kids that I was in a class with, you have to think I was in a classroom with Anthony Green, Christian Casanova, Cam Zagami, Dijak, what's her face? She wrestles for Limitless now. I forget what her name is. Those type of names. Like the Warbeard, all those dudes were all part of the school, part of the class that I was in. And so obviously me being inexperienced, like learning from these people was a grace. It was a treasure to have, and I was blessed to have these people. But the problem is I was just not getting the hang of it. I was not where I wanted to be. And eventually got to the point that Amato got so frustrated with me. He sat me down and gave me a hard talk, and he looked at me and goes, "Listen, if you keep performing the way that you're performing, you're never going to be a wrestler." And when he said that, that was like me 6 months into being at the school. That was the first time with anything in wrestling related that I ended up quitting, was the school. Because I was so down on myself at that point about it. And at that point, I really didn't know what to do. And then eventually I got in contact with a guy that had a wrestling ring that was like an hour and a half north of me. And he was like, "Yeah, you can come up here and come just do shit in the ring and whatever you want." And I was like, "However many days you want." So I just started going up there like twice a week, every week, for like 6 months at that point. And this guy would help me. His name's Owen Brody. He was trained by Steve Bradley. So he had he had the experience. So I did a lot of work with him, all that stuff tied together, and eventually I had my debut match with, all the get up and everything, and it pretty much, like, from all that experience that I gained there, it all was history at that point. From then, I would do random seminars and stuff like that. We had a lot of people that came up to me and that done similar seminars. One that I would do specifically that wasn't at shows was Bob Evans' web seminar. Bob Evans is the motherfucking genius of pro wrestling, I would say, and no one can argue with me otherwise. That man knows how. If it wasn't for Bob, I don't think I would have been able to. I have 3 shows that I have successfully run under my belt. If it wasn't for Bob, like, in his teachings, I probably would have never been able to run those shows. So,
no, I'm a big brutal Bob Evans fan. Like, he's been on the podcast too, just to let everybody else know. Yeah, we have a lot of people.
There's a lot. I remember we were sitting there in the parking lot. You showed me, and I was like, this is so many people. These are a lot of people I know. Like, that's crazy.
Bro, so we're going to jump to my favorite part of the podcast, right? Which is the 3-count podcast, 10-count questions. And here's how it works. I'm going to fire off 10 questions at you rapid fast. Whatever your answer is, that's your answer.
Oh, God. I'm not good with these. Oh, boy.
Good. I'm going to put on an imaginary timer for added pressure. And in the words of my favorite commentator, Mike Goldberg, here we go. SmackDown or Raw?
Raw.
Favorite actor?
Liam Neeson.
Apple or Android?
Android.
Favorite movie?
The Town.
Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
Favorite cartoon?
God. I don't know. Family Guy.
I love it. Waffles or pancakes?
Waffles.
Favorite podcast?
3 count.
That's right. It's not like it's marketed everywhere. Nominate one person you want to see on this podcast.
Ooh, God. See, I'm trying to think of people that it depends on who you know or you don't know, I guess. Somebody that I would like to have their, career talked about. Oddly enough, his name is Alexander Lee. That he is probably one of the closest people to me in my professional wrestling career. If it wasn't for him, there's a lot of things that I wouldn't have been able to do or would have been comfortable doing. On a real life note, if it wasn't for Alexander Lee, or real name Ben, he saved my life in more than one way. So with that, he's kind of the stable of my whole career when it comes to basically being who JP O'Reilly is.
Love it. And then last but not least, my favorite question I ask every single person who comes on this podcast. Favorite curse word?
Cunt.
I love it, bro. You know what? I think it's now back-to-back episodes that we've had that used.
Which is funny because I don't even think I said it once in this podcast.
It is how it is. It just works that way.
If you heard me just at home or at work or at a show, I'm pretty sure while being at that NWW show, I was talking to somebody and I was just like, yeah, this fucking cunt. And I had these people had never met me just look at me and they're like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm just talking. And I'm like, are you sure? I was like, you sound like you really hate something. Like, no, this is just how I am.
Bet. Listen, so the last thing I need from you is to let our listeners and our viewers know where they can find you.
You can find me at JP O'Reilly on Facebook, JP O'Reilly 95, JP O'Reilly 95 on TikTok. Pretty much JP O'Reilly anywhere on YouTube. If you type in JP O'Reilly Wrestler, it's everything of my stuff pops up on there. I don't use Twitter or Instagram as often or really that much. I should. But yeah, basically Facebook, TikTok, are my main ones.
Bet. Well, he gave you all of his handles. He told you where you can find him, and then you know what that means. Like every great part of a wrestling match, we gotta take this home, because this is the Three Count Podcast presents Now Entering, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And like I said, it's never about me. It's about who's into the ring. So who's in the ring? You see him right there. The man with the biggest journey of them all, JP O'Reilly. And you know what that means? Tune in to the next episode and be there, or you're literally subscribed to all of our social media platforms. You're subscribed to our YouTube channel. You're following us on Spotify. You're even listening to us on Amazon Music, and you're checking us out on that dumb app with the stupid jingle that goes, iHeartRadio. However it goes. You're even buying all of our merch on foryourwear.com, or you can check us out on prowrestlingtees.com. You're doing all that stuff, or you're really telling your mom about us, your dad about us, your aunt, your uncles, your aunties, your cousins, your best friends, your enemies, because we love haters too. You're doing all this stuff, or you're really just kind of waiting for this episode to end. You're waiting for the outro, and then you're choosing another episode to listen to. Kawaii. What's going on? It is Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And what we need from you guys is to kind of show some support, right? We want you guys to go to our YouTube channel at the 3 Count Podcast, go on to our Twitch channel, 3 Count Pod, or even our Facebook page, 3 Count Podcast, and just give us a like, follow, subscribe, even give us a comment, right? Do all that cool stuff. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your enemies, right? Or you can even come talk to us and just chat us up, right? Find us on Twitter at 3count_pod. Find us on IG and on TikTok at 3 Count Pod. Go ahead and leave us those comments. We want to hear from all of you guys. We're going to keep putting on videos and stuff like that. We want to keep making this content better, so we want your guys' support. Also, if you guys want to, go support us at prowrestlingtees.com/the 3 Count Podcast, or even find us on foryourwear.com. Give us the support. Show us your guys' love, because we want to give it right back to y'all. So, in the meantime, between time, love y'all.